So it's, I used to do that with boats when people would buy high-end boats and they'd be like, oh, what's the difference between this and this? And, when you get into expensive boats, you get into kind of crazy numbers. And I'm like, the difference between these boats is a Ferrari. Like you go buy this one for 500 or this one for 800, and you could buy this one and a Ferrari, or you could buy this one. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying you shouldn't buy the $800,000 one, but you put it in those terms, like, there's a Ferrari more expensive. It's like, oh, okay. So, and you kind of forget that with science equipment.
Oh,
you just
man.
look at it all the time.
You should still be a boat broker, Matt. That's fantastic.
Oh,
Ahoy, hoy, shipmates. Welcome back to On the Wind. I'm your host, Andy Schell. Back again with another episode where Matt, Rutherford, and I sit down and shoot the shit about all sorts of random stuff. This was probably the most random episode we've ever done. We spent the first 10 to 15 minutes talking about techno music and DJing and Matt's turntables. But it's always a delight talking to Matt. Obviously, we always bring it back to sailing, which is kind of the point. So this was a particularly fun one. Before we get into it, quick updates on 59 North. We just launched a new newsletter. So we've had this Skipper's Briefing newsletter that's done by the Quarterdeck, which is our educational newsletter. That comes out on the 1st of each month or thereabouts. We just launched a new one called the Logbook, which also comes out monthly, but comes out middle of the month. And the Logbook is more of a marketing email where we talk about open bunks we have on our trips, upcoming events, stuff like that. But each issue is written by one of the full-time staff at 59 North to give a glimpse behind the scenes of what we do. So, for example, I wrote the first one, and I talk about how we create the sailing schedules 2 years in advance and how we plan them and the tools we use in order to mitigate the risk of the domino effect if we have a delay due to weather or maintenance or whatever. There's quite a lot that goes into this. I talk about this in detail in the Logbook newsletter. So that's how it opens up. And then the rest of the newsletter is basically what's coming up at 59 North. Speaking of which, 3 big events happening in order of appearance. Falcon Open House in Annapolis is going to be on June 13th. That's Tuesday. That is free, but you do have to sign up for it so we know who's coming. So it's right on the homepage or under the events tab. You'll see Falcon Open House. Sign up for that. And then the boat show, of course, we've got the Seamanship Workshop, 3 days. Nikki and I are running it. Brady and Blue are going to join us as guest speakers. Nigel Calder's going to be there. Håkan from Stormweather Shanty Choir is coming all the way over from Norway to entertain and delight us. It's going to be a big blowout of seamanship and sailing and all kinds of fun stuff. That's 3 days. And then the Thursday night, we're doing a social event in the evening, all at Ram's Head. All is open for booking on the website, right on the homepage, or go to 59-north.com/seamanship. Last but not least, we've got several open bunks this year on Falcon mainly, mostly towards the end of the year. We are going to the Med for the first time ever, and I am skippering the first trip from Lagos to Palma de Mallorca in the Mediterranean. Very excited about that. We've got spots open for that trip in, and then the trip out from Palma back to Lagos, the last 2 trips of the year on Falcon. So if you want to sail with me and you want to sail in the Med, come join us in November. Okay, until next week, hold fast. On the Wind is presented by our longtime friends and sponsor, Forbes Horton Yachts. Forbes can buy you your dream boat, can sell your current boat, the 2 happiest days in a boat owner's life, buying your boat and selling your boat. He can help with all that, whether or not he's listing the boats or not. You find your dream boat somewhere else, hire Forbes to be your buyer's broker. Actually, you don't even need to hire him. He just splits the commission with the selling broker. Works very happily like that. You can check out his listings if you're interested at Forbes Yachts. I'm going to steal August's phonetic spelling. It's Foxtrot, Oscar, Romeo, Bravo, Echo, Sierra. That's ForbesYachts.com. I'm excited to see Forbes when I go back to Annapolis. And one of the things I've wanted to do for a long time, we're going to have to make this happen, is August and I love doing these boat shopping podcasts. And I would love to go on Forbes' website and do our little boat shopping about some of the listings he has. Matt, in fact, from today's episode inspired me to rethink about that because we talk about Matt being a broker towards the end of it. But that's kind of beside the point. But anyway, if you want to see Forbes' listings and get a preview of maybe a potential podcast idea in the future, again, go to ForbesYachts.com. That's FORBES, ForbesYachts.com. Thanks to Forbes for sponsoring the show. On the Wind is also presented by Dive Blue, who make portable tankless scuba dive systems. We have one on each of our boats, in fact. Enjoy diving on your own terms with a Blue tankless dive system. What is tankless diving exactly? We like to think of it as innovation. Blue's tankless diving system gives divers an opportunity to experience the beauty of the underwater world without the constant worry of having heavy scuba tanks on hand. They carry two types of tankless dive systems, the Nemo system for tankless diving up to 10 feet, and the Nomad system, which is what we have on Falcon and Eastbjorn, for depths up to 30 feet. For us, it's not just about having fun. It allows us to clean the bottom of the boats, fix a wrapped prop, or otherwise inspect the keel and things that you used to have to do either with heavy scuba equipment or by taking a bunch of free dive breaths. And this is basically now a critical tool on both of our boats in our maintenance toolkit. So anybody that's a sailor, that's doing your own stuff out there, I highly recommend one of these systems. The amount of money we've spent on divers over the years to clean the hull before a big passage would easily pay for a tankless scuba dive system. So check out the Nemo and Nomad dive systems at diveblue.com. That's DIVE BLU and then the number 3.com. Thanks again to Dive Blue for sponsoring the podcast. You're listening to On the Wind, my podcast about offshore sailing. I'm your host, Andy Schell. Matt Rutherford is back on the show for I don't know how many times now, and we shoot the shit about all sorts of random stuff. We go from DJing to techno music to house music to even disco music. We talk about Matt's solo sailing adventures. We talk about the fact that I've been further north than Matt has ever been, and yet he's been around Cape Horn. And we talk about his latest adventure going to Greenland. In fact, Matt is leaving, or has left by the time you hear this. He will be on his way from Annapolis back to Western Greenland and as far north as he can get to do the research for the Ocean Research Project. Check out and follow Matt's expedition at oceanresearchproject.org. And if you have the means, send him a donation. It helps a ton, as Matt will tell you in this episode. Okay, here we go. All right, cool, man. Right, let's get right into it. Every time you come on, I say that you're the most often guest on the show, and it just continues to build on that. So, where are you right now? What's going on?
I'm in my office in Annapolis. I don't know how you turn this background off that I got going on here, but I don't even know how to do it. But anyways,
it's a cool background.
Right behind me, I got my turntables. I've got all this other shit. So, but yeah, we got a little office in Annapolis, right above Spin Sheet and Eastport, and mostly because the guy has been very generous with us, and so we're getting ready to leave tomorrow. We leave to sail to the Arctic. And,
tomorrow, okay. Nothing like the last minute to do this. We've been trying to connect since freaking boat show. This is like 8 months in the making here.
Yeah. Well, we're both busy and, been running around. So better, it's on the eve of doing it. So it's not a bad time for it.
That's cool, but yeah.
There's a lot of running around, as you can imagine. Just trying to get everything ready.
I'm getting echo of my, I can sort of hear myself. No, not anymore now. It's probably not going to. It won't matter in the local recordings. So never mind. I'll cut that out. So wait, the turntables aren't going along with you?
No, I've got a different set of turntables. I got two sets now. So, I got to get the old classic Technique 1200 MK2s, which is the originals, and then I had MK5s on the boat, which is the last generation before it went digital. The last one with analog pitch controller. So,
so what's your thoughts on, this is completely off topic, but I've been super into techno music lately, and the DJs doing it's fully digital. It's like a turntable. What's your thoughts on that? Is that cool, or is that lame, or what's the deal? Are you
I don't know.
What's your attitude on that?
I mean, I had a bad attitude on it for a long time, but then you kind of get to a point in life where it's why? Well, you're fighting against a river, or it's you're not going to stop the flow. So, yeah, basically it went from turntables being the original OG techno platform, right? You have two record players, you got a mixer in the middle. And you actually had to have an ear to know the beat per minute. And you had to be able to speed up and slow down the records using, being able to tell the difference, the pitch difference in your headphones. It's extremely difficult to do. And these were vinyl records. You had to put a needle on it and all the rest. And then it went to the CD scenario. It's called CDJs, where they had two CD player things with low CDs in. And they started doing what they call auto sync. So it automatically does all the hard work for you. And then it went digital, where it's like you don't even have the CD things anymore. They basically just have a giant mixing board and a couple little things that kind of look like, miniature turntable sort of. But it's all done electronically. So you don't, all the actual difficult part of being a DJ back in like the 90s at like raves or, spinning techno music is basically gone. So it's kind of like the difference between learning how to play guitar and learning how to play Guitar Hero. It's a lot easier to learn how to play Guitar Hero than it is to learn how to play guitar. So they basically made it a lot easier. And now everybody, and the DJ spends half the time just dancing around now behind the fucking mixing board because they don't actually have to do anything but press a couple of buttons every once in a while.
But go ahead, keep going. I love this. In all honesty, just to bring it around, there's something called Serato for turntables. It's kind of a blend between the two. So I'm like half cheating, to be quite honest with you. I have old Technique 1200 turntables, but I've taken all my records and put them in a program. So you got these control records. I can turn any record into that record. Anything from Beethoven to any kind of house to, Old Dirty Bastard. It doesn't matter. Which is good because some of my records are 20 years old. And if you scratch them, they don't even make these records. Like if I scratch them, I'll never be able to fix them. So it does save you from scratching records because these control things are a dime a dozen. But it does give you some readout of some information digitally. You still have to do everything analog. But it does tell you like beat per minute if you want to see it. Which is, it makes it easier, obviously. If this is at 121 beat per minute, this other one's at 118, well, I just speed it up a little bit, make them both 121. I still have to blend them together. And because turntables are machines, they're not 100%. Like, they drift away. They're not going to be completely on point. So I can mix two records together perfect in the beginning, but because they're machines, one is going to start being a little faster or slower, and you got to know which one it is, and you got to keep making adjustments. And then there's scratching, which you can't really scratch with any of that. Like basically, that's an art that's being lost because with the digital shit, they don't even begin to do that, and that's a hard thing to do. So what I try to do is blend like scratching with house music or techno music or whatever. So it's a blend of kind of both worlds. But yeah, basically modern DJs are just dancing around with a jukebox, I guess. So my question was though, because the tools have gotten easier, has that created better, not necessarily better, but like has that created good music? Like because you have more easier tools and like creativity, so has that created good music?
Well, most DJs don't create their own music.
Well, I know that, but you know what I mean.
But I think that, there's definitely some tools that help people who actually create the techno tracks versus the people who play them as DJs. I don't think, I would say no. It's you got to have a computer program play like a guitar piece. Probably with AI, it can write its own guitar piece and play it. Does that make it better than a guy who can actually play the guitar? So it makes it more accessible. So maybe you could argue through being, because it takes a lot less time to learn how to do it. Then more people can do it. More people do it. Maybe there's more creativity because there's more variations. But then when it was harder, there was a lot of creativity and innovation in how we could take these record players and do all this stuff with them that they really weren't designed to do. I hated that shit when the CD thing came out in the beginning. So I was like, these aren't DJs. They just hit sync buttons. They don't have to do any real work. Like, totally takes it out of it. But like I said, man, sometimes in life you just gotta let go. And at this point, I'm just like, whatever. Like, I know that I'm a relic with my old ass turntables. I know it's a bygone era. And I don't care. I still think it's the original is the best, and whatever. Kids can do whatever they want to do. Look, I'm 42 years old. What the hell?
I was just gonna say that's very mature of you, Matt. I'm impressed.
Yeah, thank you.
So, all right, before we leave the music thing, like I said, I've been super into techno and house, and like I listen to that while I work. Like if I'm at my computer, especially if I'm writing or doing something creative, it helps my brain focus. You got to send me, like, are you into that kind of stuff?
Well, yeah, I was, I was going to raves back in '94. You got
to send me, like, you got to send me some
in the '90s.
You got to send me some like deep cuts, man. Send me some stuff I need to listen to because I'm like right now I'm just like Apple Music, play me some techno, but like you got to send me something to check out.
It's broken into a million subgenres. Like a house has a million versions. Like it gets kind of, and a lot of that didn't exist. And quite honestly, I listened to a lot of it in the 90s, and I used to DJ at raves back in the late 90s. And then, I kind of got out of it a little bit. But yeah, man, I mean, I can get you some. I mean, like, some of it's old school. I'm still trying to get reaccustomed to the new shit, man, because I'm, like I stepped away from it for a while, and I come back, and now instead of like 5 types of house, there's like 50 types of house, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, where do I start over here?
Just
Jungle doesn't even exist.
Send me a list
Jungle?
of Jungle. No, see, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Send me a
it
list
doesn't
of
even
people I
exist.
should check out or bands or whatever. What do you even call it? Like artists, I guess. Whatever. Send me a list.
Yeah, DJs, I guess. But all right, yeah, and then there's dubstep came and went. I mean, there's all this other shit that's happened in the meantime. But it's a lot of fun, and you can do, you can do both the hip hop sort of thing, trying to blend acapellas and instrumentals, and put, or some weird record, try to put Old Dirty Bastard on like a Beethoven cut or something, whatever it is, just play around with it. And so there's, more genres than just techno, but I'm still working through the weeds myself. I'm really just trying to work on technique the last couple of years, just get better at scratching and better at mixing. And but I've been working on, the Jimmy who owns the rigging company, he has all these like disco house tracks he gave me, which is kind of like, some of it's kind of hard to listen to, but I've been working on some disco house.
Didn't house music evolve out of disco? Isn't that like a direct lineage from disco to house?
Sort of, yeah, kind of, and it's come back around full circle. So disco house has become very popular once again, and so some of it's fine. Some of it's very disco, which is kind of like ugh. But I
gotta say, speaking of disco, have you seen Saturday Night Fever? I know I'm like way late to the party here. You know the movie with John Travolta?
I haven't seen it since I was a kid.
Dude, fucking A. That there's a scene where Travolta, like 3/4 away through the movie, just like does his solo disco dancing, like the dance floor clears, and Travolta's just like feeling it. And it is fucking awesome.
Yeah,
like I don't care.
Yeah,
I don't care what you say about the music, man, but his dancing is like mesmerizing in that. It's just ridiculous. And like I hadn't seen the movie ever, and I watched it a couple weeks ago just because. Anyway, like I said, I think this movie's like 1974 or 78 or something, so I'm way behind the times here.
Yeah, that was a legendary scene. And in Europe, the techno thing has stayed strong. Europe was kind of the home of it.
Yeah.
And England in particular, and Germany, and it never really went away. Where in the United States, it got big in the underground rave scene in the 90s. It went into the clubs in around the early 2000s, and then it kind of fizzled out, and rap really took over in the clubs and all the rest. And so, but it never did in Europe. In Europe, it's still quite big. When I was in Colombia, it's still quite big. But I guess it kind of went the way of disco a little bit, where it got popular and then faded out quickly. But it hasn't in Europe. So people still spin records in Europe,
That's a good segue. I'd forgotten that you were in Colombia. That's half the reason we didn't record this podcast, because of yeah.
Oh yeah,
so,
sure. Blame it on Colombia.
No. I'm not blaming it on Colombia. I'm just it was entirely on me. But I want to talk about Colombia. Why did you go there, and was it successful?
Well, I sailed around North and South America nonstop, single-handed, and I circumnavigated South America. I also went through the Panama Canal, so I went around the whole South America. I never stepped foot on South American soil, so it was like, probably should go to South America. Now, where do you go? I looked at Argentina. It was, I don't know, it was kind of European-ish, and I wanted something different. I looked at Venezuela, but, it's still pretty bad as far as people getting kidnapped and all the rest. And yeah, I don't know, Colombia just seemed like, it seemed quite different than the United States. They've stabilized quite a bit since the old Pablo Escobar era. It's got a very vibrant culture, so I just, and I could afford it. It is cheap enough, and because I didn't have a lot of money. So I wanted to get some time and get away from everything, the boat, the ocean, the nonprofit, and kind of decompress. It had been a couple of long years working on a boat, getting it ready. It was a tough expedition last year. And I wanted to get some time to write this book, or at least some of it. So I went to Colombia. I rented a place in Bogota, which is a big bustling city that everybody hates. Everybody in Bogota hates Bogota. They all say, oh, Medellin, Medellin. And nobody in the world would understand why anybody would want to go there, because there's like 9 million people. It's a big, bustling, loud, kind of dirty-ish city with decent amounts of crime and all the rest. But it was perfect. I was in 2 years in a boatyard in Deal, Maryland, with like 3 people and a cow. I needed a big bustling city.
Yeah.
And there's no tourism there, because tourists just don't go there, because why would they? So it was great. Tourism can be a good thing, but it can be a bad thing too. And when people aren't used to seeing you, so to speak, it's a little bit of a different atmosphere. Harder in some ways and better in others. But yeah, so I got some writing. I got a lot of the new writing done. I got to redo some of the old stuff that's been there. I mean, I'm not in a hurry to write this book or to put it out there. Hopefully in the next year or so it gets done. But I don't really think anybody's going to read it, to be honest with you. I mean, some people will. I got some audience on my own podcast or whatever it is, that Single-Handed Sailing podcast, that is.
Wait, remind the audience who came up with that title, by the way.
Oh, yeah, Andy came up with the damn title.
It's a great title. It's perfect.
Yeah. I do it alone. I mean, originally I was going to do another big single-handed trip, which I still plan on doing at some point in the future. I'm just too broke to buy a boat right now. But and all my time and energy goes into the ocean research nonprofit. I don't have any time left to do anything else. But I do want to. But then, yes, you made me feel better when you said, well, you do the podcast alone, so you're single-handed. I do need to, when I get back from this next Greenland trip, I think I might start interviewing some more single-handers, because I basically said everything I could possibly think of saying about single-handed sailing in the first 75 hours of the freaking podcast. So now I'm just talking about whatever, and I do go back to single-handing. I told the whole story of the trip around the Americas, but I mean, how much can I possibly say? It's been hundreds of hours of me talking. What else is there to say about single-handed sailing?
How many episodes have you done now?
200 and something.
Jesus.
200 and they're all
catching
an
up
hour
to
long.
me. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of hours. I mean, the amount of me going blah 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 is quite amazing.
Well, it's funny because I don't listen to your podcast. No offense, but I don't listen to any sailing podcasts. So
I don't listen to yours either. So
I get your tidbits from your podcast through Lee, because he listens to all of your podcasts and he loves it, and he's just like, yeah, Matt's just talking about Matt shit. So one of the things we're veering away from Colombia now, but one of the things I did want to ask you was what do you talk about on the podcast? Because I know it's just you ranting about stuff. So what is some things you've been talking about lately that has come out on your podcast recently?
I try to do the podcast like I'm talking to an old friend. There's a time in life to be casual and there's a time in life to be formal. And you could argue when is what appropriate. But, I definitely take the more casual approach. If you're talking to an old friend, there's kind of, not that nothing's off limits, but kind of that way, and you're going to be very just, I don't know, honest and yourself. So there is kind of a free, I don't really plan what I'm going to talk about before I do it for the most part. I might have a little bit of an idea, and I'm quite ADD, so I get distracted easily by my own thoughts, and I go on these tangents of whatever crazy shit pops in my head. I do mostly talk about sailing, obviously, and whatever's happening at the time, whatever we're doing to get ready for a trip or whatever it is. But then I might veer off and talk about, aliens invading Earth with spiders that shoot laser beams out their eyeballs, which I did last time for a few minutes. But then I get back around to Amundsen, and then from Amundsen somehow I'm talking about sailing again. I don't know. So it's just whatever pops into my head at that minute. For the most part. I also have started a Patreon podcast, which I do once a month because I need to make money. I don't make money off my podcast. I don't monetize it. I don't sell commercials. I don't do anything like that. I do push the nonprofit, and it's been very helpful getting donations for the nonprofit. But I personally make nothing. It costs me money, and not a lot, but every month you got to pay to have the service, and you got to buy a microphone or whatever else. So I do a Patreon podcast. So people are giving me money, and that's more just informative. One was about autopilots and wind vanes. One's about how to, reefing systems.
Cool.
So yeah, it's a little bit, and that's just once a month. It's just a half hour. Although I always end up talking for an hour because I just can't. I'm so used to it. I'm becoming uninterviewable, I think, because you ask me a question and I'll talk for a half fucking hour. You won't have time to say anything. So. No,
that's the best. I always judge my podcast by the episodes that are the best are the ones where I talk the least. So guests like you are the best. You just let her rip, man.
Yeah, I'm easy that way.
So all right. So have you? Speaking of single-handed sailing, have you followed the Golden Globe? Were you interested in that at all?
I mean, I got all the respect in the world for anybody who sails alone around the world nonstop, single-handed, and people in the Golden Globe race. There's a lot of interesting things about it, and like I said, I got nothing but respect for them. I'm love to see that a girl won. I think that's fucking great. I don't know if a girl's ever won.
A woman, Matt.
A woman. All right, I'm 42. All right, a chica. I've been in Colombia.
Listen, I only say this.
Senorita. There it is.
I only say this because I was told this recently for the same reason. I was like, man, but I feel old now. Anyway, yes, a woman won the race.
A woman who may or may not be elderly won the race, and and I think that's great because I don't know of any. I don't know if a female, how's that, has won any like big round the world single handed thing, whether it's Vendée Globe or whatever it is.
Never single handed. Only crewed.
And so, I mean, I'm all about promoting women in sailing. I think they can sail a boat just as well as a man, and I love to see there is a serious lack of diversity in sailing. Is a bunch of white males, essentially. So whatever we can do to break that up and make more diversity in it, I'm all about it. Now, I don't follow the Vendée Globe very closely, only because I hate the rules. I hate the thing where they got to go into these little harbors and throw flash drives at people.
You mean the Golden Globe, not the Vendée?
I'm sorry, the Golden Globe.
Yeah,
the Vendée Globe, I don't follow. I don't really like. I don't care much about racing. I think the Vendée Globe's amazing that these guys are pushing these boats that hard. But it's like spaceships. It's like they're on spaceships. It's just sort of. And I've never been that much into racing personally, and I don't know why. I mean, I wish I was. I respect ocean racing a lot. It just doesn't do it for me, for whatever reason. But yeah, the Golden Globe has a lot of rules. You got to stay between this latitude and that latitude. You got to, you got to do these flash drive things. You don't own the rights to your own footage. You can drop an anchor and still call it nonstop. There's some shit in there that it just ruins it for me. I don't know. To me it really doesn't have much to do with the original Golden Globe. I mean, I know that in the original Golden Globe you could be on any boat you wanted. You could go any latitude you want. You could have any equipment you wanted. They had
there were no rules. There were no rules.
Yeah. And they did a Bernard Moitessier version during the first one, where that Susan Culpry, or I don't remember her name, she did a Moitessier, that German single-handed woman. Yeah, she's badass. She's like a serious badass sailor. And that was very much like the Golden Globe. It didn't get the press because it didn't have the name, but it really was much more like the original. So, I feel in some ways like there's kind of not a full-on money grab, but there's a lot of, I don't know, it's a lot of monetization sort of thing, or it's just...
Well, at some level, it's... I know what you're saying. On some level, it's understandable because you gotta, like, you got, like, they're doing an event. It's gotta pay for itself at the least. And I know what you mean. My main question, though, is do you feel... Is there any part of you that wishes you were out there with them?
No, not at all. I would hate to sail around the world nonstop single-handed and have anybody tell me anything about what I can and can't do. You tell me I can't go to this latitude, fuck you. You're like, I'm going to go to this latitude. Like, I absolutely wish I could do another big single-handed trip. I like I would love to sail around. I don't care if you can sail faster than me either. Like, I don't want to be out there worrying about a boat behind me and a boat in front of me. I want to kick my feet up and read a book. It's just not the mentality that I have in the ocean, or not a mentality I want to be in. That's not where I am mentally. To me, being alone in the ocean has something to do with embracing solitude, embracing nature, being part of the ocean, being one with the ocean, and the challenge involved with whatever gets thrown at you. But the idea of worrying about other boats would just suck for me. I mean, I understand why other people love it, and the spirit of competition and all the rest, and how it keeps them focused maybe, because they have this always worrying about these other boats. But to me, that's the opposite of what I want. So yeah, I hope that I can do another trip sometime sooner than later. But it's going to be under my own scenario. I'm not going to do it as part of a race. I don't care about breaking a record. I'll do it because I want to do it, and that's it.
I was talking to, I talked to Lisa Blair the other day, not for the podcast, just a conversation, and she's got this like 3 to 5 year plan of doing she did her solo round Antarctica record thing.
Right.
Last, I guess, a year or two ago, she finished that, and now she wants to do the Arctic. So going Northwest Passage, Northeast Passage. She's trying to build a new boat to do it and all this stuff. And that is like a record attempt. She's trying to raise money for environmental stuff. But I thought of you when she was talking about that. But it sounds like
I talked to her, too, the other day about it, or whatever, a couple of months. She did some TV show thing, too. I don't know how it worked out for her. I talked to her briefly afterwards. This is like Survivor or something. She said she lost like 15 kilo or something like starvation.
Oh, well, I got to ask. So I'm going to have her on the podcast. I didn't know about that. I'll ask her about that.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on with it exactly. It sounded... I mean, I talked to her right before she went and after, because I was talking about her potentially coming out and being my first mate on this expedition this year.
Okay.
She wanted some Arctic stuff. We're actually going to be in the Northwest Passage. Whoops. I kind of told her, like, because I didn't think we would at the time. And she wanted... The problem that she faces, and she's very intelligent, and she is a person not to be underestimated.
Yeah, she's like you. She just says she does what she says she's going to do.
Yeah, she's better at researching things than I am. She's probably a bit smarter than me too, honestly. But this way, in 2018, I was going to do the same thing as a fundraiser to finish building the boat. And I talked about it in my podcast. I was getting, I was going to do it in an unfinished interior, but all the sailing stuff would be finished. The problem is two problems in particular. The first and biggest problem is that in 2017, a French frigate went north of Siberia, and Putin got mad about it, and they're trying to claim that Russia owns all the water getting to the North Pole, all the way up. Where you have a 200-mile exclusive economic zone, they're trying to say, no, this is the water, the soil under the water is just like the soil in Moscow. It is our Russian soil. Which the United Nations says, well, that's not the case, but they're like, I'm Russia, what you going to do about it? And so they put missile systems on these islands up there for the Cold War bases and new radars, and they say they'll blow anybody out of the water who tries to go above Russia without the special permit, which involves you have to have a Russian pilot on your vessel, and you have to stop in certain ports, and it's not cheap to have this Russian pilot, and they treat a sailboat the same as a freighter. They don't care if you're in a canoe.
Yeah, I remember you talking about this before on a previous episode.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about this, but yeah, okay.
It hasn't changed. And
I'm sure it's not gotten any better recently either.
No. And Russia is not one to be trifled with. They'll blow you out of the water, and what do they care? Or they'll rip you off your boat and throw you in a gulag, and nobody's going to really give a shit. They'll sink your vessel, and then, whatever. So... And Lisa is aware of all this. I talked to her about all this because I was, like, hey, Lisa, I was trying to do this 2018 myself, and then I ran up against this. I did find out that there's a private company that's government-controlled, sort of, that does give the permits. I figured out who the main guy was in the company. Like, how do I give this guy a bunch of, like, vodka or something? How much vodka do I need to get this permit? But they haven't given it to anybody. She's going to try some approach with the United Nations. I'd wish her the best of luck with it, but... I find it unlikely that at this point Russia is going to let anybody sail north of do the Northeast Passage single-handed because of this Russian pilot / we got to take over. A lot of natural gas is there. That's why they're doing it. Like 1/3 of all natural gas on Earth, they estimate, is in those waters north of Russia going to the North Pole. So it's really just about natural resources. That's all this is really about. And I don't think they're going to care about a sailor trying to break a record. But I certainly hope they do. I mean, I'm rooting for her. She also wants to do it without an engine and trying to sail. Nobody has ever sailed through the Northwest Passage without an engine. And in the right season, with the right winds and a lack of ice, it is possible. But it's extraordinarily difficult because you get a lot of all or nothing. You can have a week with no wind at all, and then it's blowing a gale. You can have some years where it's full of ice, other years where there's no ice. So you gotta get really lucky with the weather and the ice in the Northwest Passage to do it nonstop. And then you got to get real lucky with Russia and, I don't know, marry a Russian and then become a Russian citizen. Because Russian citizens, by the way, are allowed to sail north of Russia without a pilot. So technically a Russian could do it, or if you married a Russian and became a Russian. But if you're Australian or American or whatever else. So it's difficult. As far as her capabilities, yeah, she's a badass and she's a hell of a sailor. So I don't doubt that. But I think my shit was the opposite. I had a 72-foot boat. I'm thinking, I'm going to load this bitch up with as much diesel as humanly possible because there's no wind in the Arctic.
You're going to steam around.
Well, I'll sail as much as I can, but I figure, it's like a 9,000-mile trip, roughly, around the top of the world. It's not nearly like the equator. Maybe it's 10,000, but it's something in that range. And I figured, shit, man, you need to be able to motor for at least 3,000 because it's literally, you can have no wind. Like some seasons, there's no wind the whole summer, So like Mark Schrader, those guys went around the Americas, 2009, I think it was. They had to motor the entire Northwest Passage because they had no wind the entire time they were there.
Damn.
So, and other times it's blowing gales all the time. So it's very unpredictable. I wish her the best, and what she's trying to do. And like I said, I have a number of respect for her. She's an amazing sailor and a badass and all the rest. And she's aware of all this stuff. Like I thought I was going to give her some kind of information. She already knew it. She was already deep. She already went beyond me with some of it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's a cool thing. It would be neat if she pulled it off. But yeah, she's definitely up against it.
Well, I think she just said she's got she's doing a trip through the Northwest Passage on some kind of boat that was given to her as a sponsorship type thing to get some experience up there and just see what it's like.
Oh,
but
wow.
you just mentioned you're going to be up there now. So you're going to Greenland, but you're going to be in the Northwest Passage. What's your mission this summer?
Yeah, well, we're going to continue studying glaciers and mapping uncharted areas, and studying the sediment coming off. There's, I guess I could take a step back here for a second. Basically, the underneath of a glacier is a melted river of water, and in that is sediment, because as the glacier moves along, it chews up the earth and spits all the sediment out. There are nutrients in that sediment that are critical for plankton blooms, and plankton is sort of the foundation of the food chain. We also get a lot of oxygen from phytoplankton.
I'll just add really quick, Matt, that sediment, like I was surprised at, like you see it in pictures and stuff, but like when we went up to Spitsbergen and you're, there's glaciers that come down to the water all over the place, it is just shocking how milky the water is. Like you can't see, if you were actually swimming, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. I mean, it is like seriously cloudy water. Like you can't see anything. And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and good luck running your water maker. Anything that's going to get clogged. You're changing filters like every other day trying to keep your water maker going. Now, the thing is that as these glaciers retreat, they're going to stop. Obviously, it's kind of a Goldilocks, where too much sediment, it becomes just a river of mud. The whole fjord just comes on mud, and then you can't get photosynthesis. It's just too much. And then not enough, obviously, you don't have the nutrients and whatnot. So as glaciers retreat, they get on land, they become muddy rivers, essentially, at that point. And it just dumps mud into there until eventually they disappear completely, and then it's just nothing there. So the glaciers are going to disappear. They're doing it all over the planet, unless something happens. But at this rate, they're going to disappear. It's going to be 100 years, 200 years, 300, I don't know, but it's going to happen sooner or later. How long is it going to take for these glaciers to come back? They're going to come back the next ice age. When is the next ice age? 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 years from now? Who the hell knows? So when these glaciers are gone, they're gone. There's nobody, you're not going to be able to study them anymore. And the data that we collect today is going to be the only data that these scientists 500 years from now are going to have to understand this, because you can't study something that doesn't exist anymore. So we also map uncharted areas, not for navigation, but if you want to understand what's happening in that fjord, if you look at it like a painting, for instance, you got to have a canvas. You got to have something, a base level of information that you can paint the rest of the painting upon, being the knowledge of what's happening. So we take core samples that read, of sediments on the seafloor that goes back about 15,000 years to the last ice age. We take water samples at different depths. We lower various probes that, can get different data, CTDs. We use ADCPs, which is an acoustic Doppler current profiler that measures the velocity of the water coming off the glacier, which tells you the volume of water. Basically tells you how much water is coming off of a glacier, which leads to models for sea level rise. And we have flow-through systems that are going all the time, just running water through all sorts of different sensors. That's mostly surface water. So we're doing a wide variety of stuff really related to understanding the sediment, the volume of water coming off the glaciers, the health of the glaciers, the history of those fjords, what's been going on there. And so we did that last year down in southwest Greenland. We'll return to some of those places to get repeat sampling, and then we'll go up towards Umanak, which is north of Disco Bay. That's the origin of house music, from what I heard. And and then from there, we'll
good
go to
callback, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pretty good at that. And then from there, we'll go up to Upernavik and refuel, cross Baffin Bay to the Northwest Passage. And our primary research this year is Devon Island. When you first come into the Northwest Passage, you come into a place called Lancaster Sound. And on the south side is Baffin Island, which is where Pond Inlet is. The north side is Devon Island. Devon Island is the largest uninhabited island on Earth. And it's so big it has its own ice cap, so it has its own glaciers. So we were there in 2018 doing some research in a place called Croker Bay on Devon Island. So we'll go back to Devon Island, go to Croker Bay, and then it's like on the east side. That side of the Northwest Passage is Greenland-like. You know, the geography, the rocks, the crazy looking mountains. But as you go through the Northwest Passage, it becomes like rolling tundra, and you don't have any more ice caps. You don't have any more glaciers. You don't have icebergs really. What you have is pack ice, and pack ice, of course, is a dangerous thing. That's what crushed Franklin's boats. Pack ice is extremely dangerous if there's enough of it. But anyways, they don't have like icebergs like Greenland does. So we'll go up the east side of Devon, continuing to research these glaciers, and then we'll go north of the Northwest Passage, which is Ellesmere Island, which is, you know, hundreds of miles north of the entrance to the Northwest Passage, and map a whole bunch of areas, study a bunch of glaciers there. And so, yeah, for about a month, we'll be up there mapping uncharted areas and studying glaciers in the Northwest Passage and north of the Northwest Passage. But
What's the highest latitude you'll get to when you get up towards Ellesmere Island?
what was the highest latitude you made it to?
You're going to say, what, 1 degree higher, right?
1/10 of a degree. The
Yeah.
tiniest, minuscule. I'll get like, you know, when they roll back odometers on cars, I like figure a way to tweak it. So it says like 89 north. Take a picture. Send it to you.
89, yeah, no. No, seriously,
Yeah,
what is
I
it?
swear. Oh, I think it's probably going to be 78 or something.
Yeah.
The thing is, it isn't about... What it's about is north. You got something called... what the hell's the name of that glacier? The Humboldt Glacier. And then you got Peterman Glacier above that. These are massive, massive glaciers that dump tons of ice. And you get this area called Smith Sound. It's in between Greenland and Ellesmere Island. And that's where like Itai is, north of Connacht, it's Yorpaluk, all that. And it's a pinch point. And so you got all this ice north that's like getting dumped from these massive glaciers that hits the pinch point at Smith Sound, and it just becomes a mess of ice. And you can't really... If you go up in there, you're likely to get crushed. You got to be extraordinarily careful going north of Smith.
So that'll be one more year that I've gotten farther north than you then, just to be clear.
Yeah. How was Cape Horn? I'm sorry. But
one day.
Yeah, I know. Well, if I could sail further north, I would. Those damn glaciers are filling my path with ice. I mean, I'd sail all the way to the North Pole if it was possible. But
I know you would.
Yeah,
I have a specific question. So I'm actually going to Greenland this summer for the first time. Not really. It's quite the same. We're planning on going from St. John's, Newfoundland, through the Prince Christian Sound, which is the very southern tip of Greenland, and over to Iceland. Have you ever been through there? And like, what do you know about ice? Because I mean, sometimes you can't get through there. I know because of ice and stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's supposed to be... I haven't been through there. And that's the very bottom tip. It's a little past. It's kind of like a Straits of Magellan almost of the southern tip of Greenland. From what I hear, it's unbelievably beautiful there. But you're right. Sometimes the ice doesn't open up there until August. So I don't know when you're trying to do it. When are you trying to do it?
Late July. So late, like the right season. I think we get to Iceland like August 15th or something like that. So it'll be, late July, early August.
And you don't going around the tip of Greenland. It's like that's a Cape Horn situation. It has very localized weather that can't be predicted very well, and it can be extraordinarily bad weather. So going around the tip is, it can be quite dangerous. So yeah, you don't have it. I mean, it's blocked. The only other option you have is to go around the actual cape there.
Yeah.
But I think you got good ice chart information, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't talked to our guys at WRI yet to do a bit of research, but yeah, I mean, ultimately we're going from St. John's to Iceland. Whether we get to Greenland or not depends on the ice.
Well, if it's too icy, I would stay like at least 50 or 100 miles south of that cape because the localized weather there is supposed to be unbelievably bad, or just unbelievably unpredictable or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've wanted to go through there myself. The problem is that I can't really pick where I go for the most part because the science sort of determines where we go. And I am happy to be going back to the Northwest Passage and up into the high Arctic. I enjoy it up there. But next year's project will probably be Southwest Greenland because there's just a bunch of work that needs to be done down there that nobody has done yet. So, it should be, it should be beautiful. I would see what's going on up there now, although the spring is pretty fundamental at least for the Northwest Passage is. So,
Yeah, I know.
good
It's
luck.
I'm just now. I'm flying back to the U.S. on Thursday, so I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start thinking about this in earnest. I have two maybe sensitive questions. The first one less so that I'll ask now. And my dad brought this up when I told my dad's actually here in Sweden. He arrived today for a couple days, and he said, "How the hell does Matt pay for all that?" So, and I told him, well, I think it's some grants, but I think he's like still on a pretty big, pretty small shoestring. But like, how do you answer that question? Who does pay for everything?
Yeah, it gets paid for very poorly. Essentially. It depends, like basically with a nonprofit like this, and one thing that makes it complicated is you got three pools of money you have to think about. Let's say you're a normal ocean-related nonprofit. Almost all of them do outreach, which is education. And in that case, you need to have an office, you need to have a staff. And then you do whatever you do, petitions or protests or whatever it is you're doing. Or you're educating kids in schools, whatever. But most of it is done from behind a desk, essentially. And so that's the pool of money you need to worry about. Now, we have that aspect that we've more or less neglected for years, because this is the first decent office we've ever had, and that's only because the guy was sympathetic. We have a research vessel, a 72-foot research vessel, which anybody with a sailboat knows, having a 72-foot boat that you not just have, but you take it to the Arctic, you do 10,000-mile expeditions, things are breaking, things need replaced, it's expensive. We had to build the boat. I had to raise $175,000 and an additional $50,000 of sponsorship and do all the work myself, a lot of it. I had one guy helping me, a woodworker, but and had a lot of volunteer work, thank God.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said to my dad, I think there's a lot of volunteers involved, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's all personal people, and I'm honored that anybody would want to come out and swing a hammer or pull a wrench with me. And that can vary too. Volunteer help goes different directions. Some of them are very experienced, some of them aren't. But that's fine. There's different things that people can do, from helping me work on the engine to helping me paint something. So there's that whole thing. The sailboat is its own funding mechanism. And then there's expedition running costs. Well, how do you fund the expedition? And the expeditions, you're talking about a 5-month, international Arctic expedition. There's 7 to 9 people. They need food. The boat needs fuel. We need insurance. The insurance is ridiculously expensive. We spent $25,000 last year just on insurance.
I'm surprised you can even get insurance, actually.
It's not easy. It took a long time. It was very difficult. But so yeah, there's all these different scenarios, and they're all different. So like the money you need to do an expedition, you're not going to get that money will not pay for a boat, and you're not going to find a grant that covers a research sailboat because it doesn't really exist. What we're doing is really kind of an odd thing within the world of nonprofits. And then, trying to get administrative funding so you can have an office, you can have executive director, program director, marketing manager, social media person, whatever it is. We really need about 3 or 4 employees, so to speak, that are working every single day. When we leave on an expedition, it's a little hard for us to do all this administrative stuff because we're busy in the middle of nowhere.
Who's doing your social media right now, by the way? Because it's been good.
Just recently?
Yeah.
Like in the last week or two?
Yeah. No, seriously. Just recently.
Sophie, the camera person this year. Sophie.
It's. Oh wait, did I connect you with her? Is that?
Yeah, she's also a Rutherford.
Also a Rutherford. There you go. That's right.
I don't know, Sophie Rutherford.
Destined. Awesome. Cool.
We're ganging up.
Well, anyway, it's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's been fun.
Well, you're the second person who's told me that in the last 2 days or something. Like,
yeah,
I don't know what
great.
happened, but it got a lot better all of a sudden.
Well, it just
wasn't me.
Well, it's great. Tell Sophie she's doing a good job.
Yeah, no. So she's this year's camera person, and she's gonna make some films. Last year's little videos will be out in the next month or so, and it's just 10 videos. They're about 10 minutes each of last year's expedition. The idea is that we have different camera people on board who film and edit in their own sort of style, and every year would have kind of a unique, roughly 10 videos, but. It's going to be told. The story will be told differently depending on sort of the artist or cinematographer or whatever, the person creating the content. And then I try to stay out of it the best I can, except for basic pointers. We shouldn't have this or that in there. But I really want them to have the creative freedom. Plus, we got no money to pay them, So it's it's a little hard to boss them around too much when they're working their ass off for months on end for essentially no money, which none of us are making money. It's not like I'm making money and they're not. I mean, this year is a tough one because some of our big funding fell through and we didn't know until March. So we've had to piece this thing together. I'm selling berths on the way up and the way back. You can't sell berths when you do the research because the research is too dominant. And it just doesn't work. You see people selling berths and doing research or doing citizen science, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with citizen science, but it's not like professional grade, top level research.
Yeah, you guys have sure. So wait, you didn't. So you said where all these the different pools of money that you have to have, but you didn't say where it comes from yet.
The boat, which is a big part of my responsibility. Obviously, I'm the one who has to raise all the money for the boat and do all the work on the boat and manage the boat. That comes through public funding. All of it comes through public funding, which could be anything from people who listen to the podcast, presentations we do, personal connections to people, the board. My board is getting better and better. They're bringing in some money. So that's sort of the public sector is huge.
Yeah,
and that's where Greenpeace gets millions, hundreds of millions of dollars from the public sector.
I have a question about Greenpeace for you. We'll save that, but anyway, stay focused.
Yeah, thank you. I'm easily distracted. So yeah, there's all that, and then expedition running costs need to be more of traditional grant writing, which is also difficult. NSF grants are, if you run the department at the University of Maryland and you're a PhD with a bunch of students, you still have about a 10% chance of actually getting an NSF grant. But there's a lot of different foundations out there. Who are they? Why would they want to support you? Nobody wants to work with you if you don't have a track record. How do you get a track record if nobody wants to work with you? It's a giant catch-22. And I understand they want to protect their money. They don't want to give you 50 grand to go up there and do some research if you can't prove, if they don't feel like you're going to actually do it. And so yeah, we are also funding part of this through selling berths this year there and back, which I guess you could call public funding at that point, at some level at least. And the administrative side, we're still working on. I mean, we got a part-time executive director now, which is great because I was doing it for over 10 years, and I'm gone a decent amount of the time. So doing expeditions, and I just suck at it too. Honestly, I'm not very good at the administrative side. It's just not my strength.
Yeah. That's
so,
fair.
Man, you got to know your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, totally.
And I suck at the social media thing because I hate social media for the most part. Although I'm also learning, it's like DJing, like with the new fucking digital DJs, I'm doing the same thing. It's like, do I really need to die on this hill? You know what I'm saying? Like just whatever. I'm not going to change it. Like, it is what it is. Like, I don't have to use it, but obviously the nonprofit needs social media. So, and if I'm too stubborn, I end up hurting the organization. So I got to be a little less stubborn.
I'm proud of you, Matt. That's good. That's great.
Yeah, I'm trying.
I have another sensitive question.
Sure.
Is Nicole still doing the science stuff for you?
Oh yeah. And Nicole's still spearheading it.
You guys are no longer a couple, right?
Not for a few years.
So that's my question. What's it like working together, managing that, given the history as a couple?
There's ups and downs to it that you wouldn't have in a normal situation. Because there is a deeper understanding of each other, I guess you'd say, and a lot more history there. That can work in your favor in some cases, and it can work against you in some cases. Because you're going to interact with that person potentially, I don't know, harsher is probably not the right word, but you're gonna interact with that person in a way that you would somewhat in a relationship, like I know.
In a way so what you're saying, not harsher. There's less. You're less polite. Probably is a better way to say it.
You're quicker to lose the polite thing on both sides because it's like you already have this years and years of that sort of mechanism in place where you wouldn't be like that if it was just strictly a professional scenario from the beginning.
Yeah.
But there's also a strength there because you understand each other better too and been through a lot together in various expeditions and whatnot. So, there's ups and downs to it ultimately. I want Nicole to succeed as a scientist. She's been very critical in the development of the science from very close to the beginning. I didn't know Nicole when I started this organization, but she got involved within the first 9 months or so and over the years have helped to develop. Particularly now in the last few years, where she's been in his PhD program, University of Maryland, works at the Horn Point Laboratory. It's really been a lot more access to a lot more expensive scientific equipment that we could never get before. The value of the scientific equipment is twice the value of the vessel. So, because it's just expensive. One multi-beam sonar can be $250,000. We have one sensor is $60,000 or $80,000, and that's normal. We got sensors just sitting around that are $60,000. I could buy some real nice rims and a nice Cadillac for $60,000. How many turntables? I could have so many turntables. I could be surrounded by them. But so
this is going back to the you have these foundations that want to be careful with their money, and now you're out here saying I could buy some rims and a caddy with these sensors. So maybe
I'm not
justified.
saying I would buy. I'm not saying I would. I'm just saying that when you think about $60,000 or $80,000, how about this? I could put a very nice down payment on a house for $60,000. Does that sound more responsible? You like that one? I could buy a boat that helped me. $80,000, I could get a boat and outfit it and sail around the world nonstop single-handed. And that's just one sensor sitting in our lab. So it's, I used to do that with boats. When people would buy high-end boats and they'd be like, oh, what's the difference between this and this? And, when you get into expensive boats, you get into kind of crazy numbers. And I'm like, the difference between these boats is a Ferrari. You go buy this one for 500 or this one for 800. And you could buy this one and a Ferrari, or you could buy this one. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying you shouldn't buy the $800,000 one, but you put it in those terms, like, there's a Ferrari more expensive. It's like, oh, okay. So, and you kind of forget that with science equipment.
Oh,
you
man.
Look at it all the time.
You should still be a boat broker, Matt. That's fantastic.
Oh that was a love-hate relationship with that job. Brokers are a pain in the ass a lot of times. And
what did you love it? Give me one thing you loved and one thing you hated about it specifically.
What I loved about it is when people came to me and they had like a specific goal in mind. Particularly, it didn't have to be crazy blue water. It could be like sailing to the Caribbean, whatever it is. And they would tell me how much money they had to spend. What is their scenario? Are they alone? Do they have a wife? Do they have kids? How many like berths do we need or cabins? And what's their plans are? Because if you're just sailing island hopping in the Caribbean, you could get a production boat and not worry about it. You want to sail around under the capes, you're going to need something more beefy. And I could put myself in their place, and I could kind of like pretend to be them. And it's like, if I was you and I had 2 kids, a wife, and I want to sail to here and I had this much money, like, what would I buy? And then I would look through and try to find them boats that would be like whatever I would buy, and so I could like kind of live vicariously, sort of. And I really enjoyed that. And then, of course, when we actually find them a boat and, they get the right boat and then, they're all happy and they go off on their adventure, that's all great. What I didn't like, 2 things. One thing was dealing with other yacht brokers, because there's a reason why they have a slimy reputation. I mean, some of them are great, some of them are fine, but some of them are just assholes. They're just pompous. There's like a pompousness to them. And a lot of them don't really have that much sailing experience to begin with. So yeah, they can be kind of full of themselves and they can be assholes. And I had to deal with them all the damn time. And then some people are crazy. They think because they own something, it's worth more than it is. And if somebody else owns something, it's worth less than it is. And it's like a psychological disorder. And trying to, it's just really hard dealing with, it's money. Money does different things to different people. And some people, money does bad things to. It's like a weird thing in their brain where, and you can see it. And it's different buyers and sellers. Most people are great, but every once in a while you deal with somebody that's just like, I don't know, money warps their brain or something like that. So yeah, it was good and bad.
Was there a boat that you can think of that you helped someone buy that you were like, shit, I actually wish this was my boat. This was like the dream boat.
Yeah, I mean, I had some listings like that too, because after a while you start getting a lot of listings, and I was getting some pretty good ones. This doesn't sound like a fancy boat at all, but there was this Tartan 34 that I got. It didn't even say, it was one of the cheapest boats I sold, really. But this guy spent 3 years and did every single thing you could do to it. Like, I mean, I knew everything. Knew plumbing, wiring. He redid the bottom. He took like a 1/4 inch off the bottom and reglassed it. It had a new rudder. It had a new hydrovane.
Is this a Tartan 34 Classic?
No, it's like super old school.
Okay.
It was like an 80s. It was like an 80s something.
Okay.
It wasn't any, like the boat itself wasn't like necessarily, something to write home about. But I, from a perspective of like when I was first getting into sailing, or I didn't have, I think it sold for like 35. The guy bought it for 30, put 60 into it and sold it for 35.
Yeah.
And he wanted to sell it for that. Like I was telling him we could get more money. He's like, no, I'll just sell it for this. And it sold real quick, because you can imagine, I'm like, all right, if that's what you want, and we sold it instantly, because it was, but it had a water maker, it had like every damn thing you could ever imagine on this boat, and it really well done. And just from an earlier perspective, like if I was a younger person getting into it, this boat was as turnkey as anything I've ever seen in that price range, in that like 35 grand price range. I've sold other boats, nice double enders and little harbors and whatever else, Valiant 42s, and I sold a lot of nice boats. And of course, you'd be like, wow, this is an amazing boat, but a lot of it you like can't even think about buying, because you're just like, there's no way I have anything like that kind of money. So yeah, and I took part in a lot of cool deals. Boreals, some nice aluminum French boats, all sorts of Hylases and oysters and Tianas and all that kind of stuff.
Cool. So if you're going to do another big solo single-handed thing, would it be nonstop around the world? Would it be what would it be?
I'd like to have a whack at the figure eight. I wanted to do it the first time. I really liked when I was going around Cape Horn the first time. I thought it'd be really cool to keep going and go around, do the Americas and the world. My boat was falling apart. I didn't have the food. It wasn't realistic. But I thought about it for a couple days. I actually checked my food supply to see, like, can I do this? But I probably would have died if I tried, because my boat was, it just was falling apart at that point. I barely made it back. But yeah, I like that. And I know it's not about records. Like, I know Randall's done it. He didn't do it all nonstop, but he did most of it nonstop. I would do it all nonstop, and I would start with the Northwest Passage, because the only way to do that part nonstop, in my belief, is you got to do that first, get it out of the way, and then do the open ocean stuff. So I would do it in a kind of a different way than he did it, as far as a little bit of the route would be different. But that'd be cool, and again, like I have my one little record of being the first to sail around the Americas nonstop single-handed. I don't need to keep trying to chase records. All I really care about at this point is creating this ocean research nonprofit and making it successful, hopefully building a global fleet of research-ready sailboats, because a sailboat is a much cheaper platform that's a lot more environmentally friendly for scientific research. And the technology is getting to a point that we could do really good research on a 65, 72-foot boat you could never have done 25 years ago. 25 years from now, it's only going to get better, particularly when we integrate autonomous technologies, which are getting a bigger and bigger role in science. We're a great support platform for these technologies. So, this will make research more accessible because it'll be cheaper, essentially. And
it's interesting you say the autonomous stuff, because my friend, I won't say his name now, but he's going to be on the podcast to talk about this, because I don't think it's official yet, but he's going to work for a year or so for that sail drone company in San Francisco.
Yeah, right. We've talked to sail drone a bit.
They have their biggest sail drone's like 80 feet.
Oh yeah, they got crazy ones.
Nuts.
Those things are. They sail them into hurricanes. Like
yeah,
right
that's what he was. That's what he was saying. Yeah, I talked to him yesterday about this.
Yeah, it's neat. It's cool. There's some. I don't know how much. There's a lot of limitations with them, and there's a lot of. It depends on where they're at. Open ocean, they're pretty amazing. You get them anywhere near ice, they can't really handle it for the most part. It's really difficult to outfit them with the proper deep water mapping equipment. They do some mapping in shallow water, like ocean shallow water, like for wind farms and things of that nature. So I don't think that humans are ever going to get replaced, particularly in these polar regions where it's just, it's maybe if the ice disappears, then it's going to become easier in the future at some point. There's ups and downs about that. Like, what kind of fucking world will we live in if everybody just sat behind a computer? It's like if you go too autonomous with it, it's just like, so what are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
Just what? Like play video games all day? Like what are humans? Like if robots do everything for us, what are we supposed to do anymore? You know? So, but I do think obviously using these technologies, like we're going to have a surface vehicle next year that can go right up to the glacier face and collect data. And that's too dangerous for our sailboat to do it, because if a piece falls off, it hits the boat, we all die.
Man. Did you see, speaking of that, I think it was last summer, Sam Holmes was with some people up in Spitsbergen, and they did that. They literally went nose to the face of a glacier in their boat, and everyone, like understandably freaked out, and they got fined by the Norwegian police up there, and it actually affected a lot of regulations because those guys were just fucking idiots just to do like a social media picture.
Yeah, well, you don't. Yeah, that's stupid. I mean, it's
such a shame because like
dangerous.
I really like Sam Holmes. I interviewed him in Ireland, and I was just like, come on, man, like this is just like, how stupid can you be?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's what was those guys, the Wild Vikings? You remember them?
Yeah, Berserk.
Yeah, Berserk, and then they lost their boat in Antarctica and fucking probably trying to get footage. They knew a storm was coming. Why the hell did they go out if they knew a storm was coming?
Yeah.
And 3 people died, and they've changed a lot of regulations down in Antarctica, made it a lot harder to go down there on a sailboat because of it. So, yeah, I mean, you just don't do that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can be pretty damn reckless when I'm single-handed because I don't take anybody else out with me. But when you got a captain with crew, you got human life, and human life is the most precious cargo you could ever have. So you got to run it differently. So I don't know, man. I am going to push back a little bit. I don't think you're reckless at all. I think you appear to be with the things that you've done, but like I think, but at this point you've proven yourself that like it's everything's planned and thought out, and like yeah, you may have a greater degree of difficulty for the things that you do solo for those reasons, but like I don't know. I think it's you're selling yourself short saying that you're reckless. I just don't believe that. Well, I'm very conservative when I sail. There's no doubt about it. Maybe it's the concept of what I'm trying to do is crazy, but I do it in a very conservative manner. I remember sailing off southern Portugal years ago and seeing these boats like right up against the cliffs with my binoculars, and I'm back there with my binoculars thinking I would never be that close to the damn cliff, So, it's the same. You push through heavy ice. You get yourself into some fairly difficult situations. You try to make it as less sketchy as possible, but obviously the nature of it can be, there's always going to be danger in exploration, particularly polar exploration, and there's hardship. It's sort of the pursuit of knowledge through mental and physical hardship, at least in a traditional sense. But yeah, you don't want to put yourself in unnecessary risk. There's already a certain amount of risk going on. Like why turn the dial up just to do it? And people do stupid shit. I mean, so guys just get arrested for crashing an airplane for social media posts for his YouTube channel. He purposely crashed an airplane just to get more likes on YouTube. So, I mean, and you hear people falling off of buildings and shit trying to get selfies for their social media. It's a lot of attention-seeking shit. I mean, that's kind of the problem, things I don't like.
That's reckless. Media. You're not reckless. All right, Matt, I got to wrap this up soon because my dad's hanging out with Axel. But I want to finish by just asking, making sure that you're going to be back in time to do this boat show workshop, seamanship workshop with us again next in the fall. Are you going to make it back this time?
When is the boat show?
October. The event's October. It starts October 11th, 12th, 13th.
Yeah, I should be back on the 7th.
On the 7th.
Well, last time I was back one day before.
I know.
Like the day before I was in the ocean, and I just walked up on your little stage there. But we'll probably be back on the 5th, honestly. I baked in a lot of extra time for selling berths because I'm worried about like weather days. I don't want people to have to get new plane tickets and all this shit. So I gave myself, as long as I do 100 miles a day, which I average a lot more than that on that boat, then I should be fine. So, I mean, I should be there, I'm guessing.
Well, I hope you're there because it's going to be fun. And I was going to say, we're having an evening event this time. We're bringing, that storm weather shanty choir, the guys that do the sea shanties from Norway that I play all the time. You probably don't.
No, but I got a guy with me, one of my crew, who's been playing violin since he was 3 and can do like every sea shanty you can imagine.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we're bringing Holken over from Norway, and I was going to say you got to bring it for your evening event. Maybe you can bring your turntables up on stage and have a little sea shanty DJ.
Yeah. I mean, I can scratch on anything ultimately, but yeah, sure.
Cool, man.
But I should be back. Well, yeah. Well, thanks. Appreciate it. Having me on. And if you want to check out the Ocean Research Project YouTube thing, in about a month we should start having these last year's videos come out. And they're kind of different than your average thing. I don't know if people like them or not. I have no idea. But
we'll promote the shit out of that. So don't worry.
You can follow us. We'll have on our website oceanresearchproject.org the tracking device, so you can see where we are. We have somebody finally, thank God, who knows how to do social media. Apparently, posting things on Instagram and Facebook. I think she needs to link it to Facebook. I don't think she's been doing it. She's 25. At that age, like Facebook is for like old people. It's that kind of thing. So she probably doesn't even think of Facebook. So I got to remind her. I'll do it today. Hey, just post it on Facebook. And so, yeah, check it out, follow along, and we should have a good expedition. The boat is doing better than last year. I modified it in a lot of different ways, and I'm feeling really good about it. And
You're going to have the boat in Annapolis again then when you get back?
Yeah. Well,
cool.
Yeah.
We'll come out and hang out.
Anchor.
Yeah.
I talked to the city dock about having my boat there a couple days ago, because I'm on anchor right now out there for the Sport Yacht Club. They're like $275 a night. Like $275 a night. Like, come on, man! I'm in a local nonprofit. You can't hook me up.
Yeah, that's crap.
It's almost $2,000 a month to keep that boat in a marina.
Come on, hey, you know Martin O'Malley. Call him up. Tell him to pull some strings.
Martin O'Malley has been disappeared a long time ago. He's with Jimmy Hoffa. He's gone. So,
all right. Well, it's funny because it's a shame because Falcon's going to be our new boat's going to be in Annapolis like June 12th or something. But you're going to be long gone. I'd love to show you the boat otherwise. But one day.
Yeah. We've never even sailed together. I don't think I was on it one time. You were on a sea trial. I was on the boat.
Which boat was that?
Some Ponzi 55 or some shit like that.
Okay, all right.
It was definitely a plastic fantastic.
Let's not
boat,
count that. Let's not count that.
Well,
yeah, man. We'll do something one day.
Yep. All right.
All right, dude.
I'm glad to hear things are going good for you too, man.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, actually, what I wanted to tell you, this is a good place to end. So this year's the 10th anniversary of my podcast. It'll be in September is 10 years ago I started this. So we've been going back and picking an episode from each year, like my staff and stuff, picking an episode from each year that stood out, and we're going to replay them throughout the year. And the first one that got picked was actually Lee. He picked the very first interview you and I ever did in that down there wherever that place was in Spa Creek.
Yeah, Burnside.
Yeah, so that was even that was from my old podcast, that Two Inspired Guys show, but it's basically just you and me. I think we shared a bottle of whiskey or a bottle of wine or something, and we're just talking about all this stuff that didn't happen yet, but has happened since then. And it's just really cool to listen to that and hear you were just planning your around the Americas things. I hadn't even sailed across the Atlantic once yet. Nothing was it was all the seeds of all this stuff that we've done since, and my point is we did it. We did it and then some. We've done all that stuff we were dreaming about, and we're still doing it, and I think that's so cool.
Well, we still got a ways to go.
We do indeed. You keep calling yourself an old man, but you're a young chicken, man. We got a lot to do yet.
I'm fine. I mean, my liver is old, my legs are old, but the rest of me is doing okay.
Cool, man. Well, it's great talking to you, and I'll see you in October.
All right, man. Sounds good. See you in October.
All right. See you.
Yep. Later.
Thanks again to Forbes for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. If you want to buy your dream boat or sell your current boat, go to ForbesYachts.com. That's Foxtrot, Oscar, Romeo, Bravo, Echo, Sierra, ForbesYachts.com. Thanks again to Dive Blue for presenting this episode of the podcast. Go to diveblue.com. That's DIVEBLU and the number 3 to check out the Nemo and Nomad tankless dive systems, and never hold your breath to fix a wrapped prop again. On the Wind is the podcast about sailing, created by 59 North and hosted by me, Andy Schell, and guest hosted by Nikki Henderson, August Sandberg, and Emma Garshagen. The show is mixed and produced in Frederick, Maryland by our own Lee Cumberland. Episode artwork and website show notes are created by Laura Parent out in San Francisco. The intro theme music is composed and performed by former podcast guest, sailor, and musician Cameron Dale, while the outro music you're hearing right now is, of course, by our friends Storm Weather Shanty Choir out of Bergen, Norway. We love hearing from our fans, so send your questions and comments to holdfast@59-north.com, and please do us a favor and review the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, hold fast.
I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. As I was walking down the street, I met sweet Angeline. She said, come home with me, me lad, and we'll have a cracking time. But when I awoke, it was no joke. I found I was all alone. My silver watch and my money too, and my whole bloody gear was gone. Was gone, was gone. My whole bloody gear was gone. It was when I awoke, it was no joke, for my whole bloody gear was gone. As I was walking down the street, I met Big Rapper Brown. I asked him if he would take me in, and he looked at me with a frown. He said,
last time you was paid up with me, you took up no score. But I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more.
once more, once more, to go to sea once more. I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more. Sometimes we're catching whales, me lads, but mostly we get none. With a 20-foot oar in every paw from 5 o'clock in the morn. And when daylight's gone and the night's coming on, we rest upon our oars. And oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Ashore, ashore, or snug with the girls ashore. Oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Come all you seafaring lads that listen to me song. When you go a big boating, boys, make sure you do not go wrong. You take my tip when you come off a trip, don't go with any whores. But get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more.